Look at my face. Really look at it. Do not look away from the screen. I am 106 years old. When most people see a man of my advanced age, they automatically smile. They tilt their heads, they soften their voices, and they think to themselves, what a beautiful blessing. They genuinely think they are staring at a living monument of wisdom, a quiet survivor of a century of history. They think they are looking at a life beautifully and fully lived. They are absolutely disastrously wrong. You are not looking at a wise old grandfather giving you warm life advice. You are looking at a crime scene. You are looking at the face of a man who was robbed blind, day after day, year after year for over half a century. And the most sickening, humiliating part of this entire tragedy, I held the front door wide open for the thieves. I poured them hot coffee while they calmly emptied my vault. I did not survive a terminal illness. I did not fight in the muddy, blood-soaked trenches of a terrible world war. I survived something much more insidious and far more common. I survived 45 years of voluntary, beautifully structured slavery, neatly wrapped up in a shiny, socially acceptable package that they confidently sold to us as the American dream. They told me it was the right path. They told me it was the only responsible, mature way to exist, and I believed them blindly, just like they are telling you right now, just like you are believing them today. We were lied to. Every single one of us was sold a devastating, calculated lie. And I am sitting in this chair today, staring directly into this camera lens, because I know for an absolute fact that you are falling into the exact same trap right this very second. You wake up early. You rush out the front door. You exhaust yourself to the bone. And you tell yourself that you are building a secure future. I am here to warn you, with the heavy weight of more than a century of bitter regret on my shoulders, that the future you are sacrificing your present for is a fraudulent check that almost always bounces. Systemic security is a brilliant illusion. The social contract of working yourself into an early grave today so that you can finally start breathing tomorrow is a masterclass in deception. I am going to show you the exact, precise moment I finally realized I had murdered my own happiness. Because if you do not stop whatever you are doing and listen to me right now, you are going to end up exactly like me. You will become the tired architect of your own inescapable, crushing loneliness. Let me take you back to the very beginning of the lie, back to when my hands were strong, my back was straight, and my young mind was heavily clouded by the deep fear they purposefully bred into my generation. I grew up in the desperate, suffocating shadow of the Great Depression in the 1930s. Hunger was not just a theoretical concept or a bad word back then. It was a physical presence in the living room, a cold, bony hand resting permanently on the back of your neck. The lesson my father beat into my head was terrifyingly simple. He told me, Arthur, you hold on to a paying job with a death grip. You keep your head down. You do not ask foolish questions about fulfillment. And you fear poverty significantly more than you fear dying. And I listened. Oh, I was the absolute perfect, obedient citizen. By 1955, I walked proudly through the towering iron gates of a massive automobile manufacturing plant in Detroit, Michigan. I put on the heavy steel-toed boots. I took my assigned place on the relentless assembly line, and I let the deafening, rhythmic roar of the heavy machinery become the solitary, inescapable soundtrack of my entire existence. The smell of burning machine oil and hot metal permanently coated my throat. We men stopped talking to each other on the floor because the noise was too loud. So we just became isolated, silent islands of repetitive labor. They slapped a pair of heavy golden handcuffs on my wrists, and I looked up and thanked them for the incredible privilege. I genuinely, foolishly thought I was winning the game. I found a lovely girl during those early, exhausting years. Her name was Eleanor. God in heaven, she was breathtaking. She had this quiet, radiant grace, a deep patience and a gentle warmth that I frankly never deserved. We scraped together our meager pennies and we bought a small, modest house on a gray street in a predictably gray working-class neighborhood. We financed it with a 30-year mortgage that felt exactly like a heavy granite tombstone resting permanently on my chest every single time I tried to take a deep breath. But I constantly told myself it was ours. It was our promised piece of the pie. It was security. But my Eleanor, she had a bright fire in her soul that the gray, rainy streets of Detroit could not entirely extinguish. Every time she would stand by the small kitchen window, quietly looking out at the endless Michigan rain, she would turn to me with this desperate, beautiful hope in her eyes. She would say, "Art, let us just go. Let us pack a single suitcase tonight. Leave this damp city and drive to California. I desperately want to see the ocean, Art. I have never seen the ocean in my whole life. I want to feel the hot sun on my face before we get too old and tired to enjoy it." And do you know what I told her? Every single time she gathered the courage to ask, I told her, "Not now, Ellie. We have the heavy mortgage to pay. We have the rising property taxes. We desperately need to build our safety net first. When I finally retire, Ellie, when I finally secure my full company pension, we will buy a big silver trailer. We will hook it up to the back of the truck, and we will slowly drive from coast to coast. We will sleep under the bright desert stars, and we will walk barefoot on the sandy beach every single morning." I promised her tomorrow. I fed her empty, hollow promises of a tomorrow that did not actually exist anywhere, except in my frightened imagination. I traded the real, breathing, vibrant moments of our fleeting youth for a sterile pile of paper promises locked safely away in a corporate vault. I remember specifically in 1972, I received a surprise bonus from the factory. Eleanor saw the check and she smiled, thinking we were finally going to take a trip. But I took that money and I locked it away in a mutual fund instead. I watched the light fade from her eyes that evening. Over the years, she slowly stopped asking. She would just sit at the kitchen table silently looking at bright travel magazines while I fell asleep exhausted in the armchair in front of the television set. I was a good, reliable, silent cog in their massive, unfeeling machine. I gave them my sweat. I gave them my aching back. I gave them the absolute best decades of my physical life, naively believing that my blind loyalty would eventually be rewarded. But a corporate machine does not possess the emotional capacity for loyalty. A machine only knows how to consume fuel to keep running. And my friends, we were the fuel. I actually have a grandson now. His name is Michael. He is exactly 35 years old. And every time I look at his face, it breaks whatever small pieces are left of my heart. He comes to visit me sometimes, and he sits in the uncomfortable chair across from mine, visibly exhausted, with dark, heavy circles hanging under his empty eyes. He proudly tells me he works 60 hours a week for a massive technology company that would ruthlessly replace him in a heartbeat if he dropped dead at his sleek desk tomorrow. He spends our entire rare visit staring down at a glowing digital screen, frantically answering supposedly urgent emails that mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of the universe. He tells me, "Grandpa, I just need to push through this difficult quarter. I just need to secure this big promotion, and then I can finally take my stressed wife on that long trip to Europe." Then I can finally relax and be a father to my kids. I look deeply into Michael's tired eyes, and I do not see a highly successful young man. I see the tragic, terrifying ghost of my own cowardice staring directly back at me. I see a young man voluntarily walking into the exact same brutal meat grinder that chewed me up and violently spit me out. I try to tell him the truth. I desperately try to shake him awake. I tell him that he is teaching his children how to struggle by showing them he is never physically or emotionally present. But he just smiles that condescending, polite smile and says, "I simply do not understand how the complicated modern world works." He actually thinks he is building a legacy and an empire. I know for a fact he is just efficiently digging his own emotional grave. I kept waiting. I spent my entire adulthood in a pathetic state of suspended animation, constantly waiting for the magical day when my real life would finally officially begin. I meticulously calculated the passing days on the calendar. I obsessively tracked the slow growth of the company pension fund. I was so incredibly close I could practically taste the salt of that distant California ocean breeze. It was the fateful year 1988. I was 64 years old. I was exactly 2 months away from my official, glorious, highly anticipated retirement. 2 months away from finally keeping my desperate, long overdue promise to the only woman who had ever truly loved me. The company held a little depressing ceremony for me in the break room. They handed me a gold-plated pocket watch, a cheap, ticking piece of shiny garbage given in exchange for 45 years of flawless, unquestioning, back-breaking attendance. I vividly remember holding that cold metal watch in my calloused hand, walking slowly up the cracked concrete steps to our front door. I was actually smiling. I foolishly, stupidly thought I had finally paid the ransom in full. I thought I had successfully bought back my freedom from the crushing system. I pushed open the heavy front door and I happily called out her name. "Ellie. I am home early, Ellie. We did it. We are finally free." But the house was entirely, completely silent. It was a suffocating, heavy kind of terrifying silence that instantly crushes the breath right out of your fragile lungs. I found my beautiful wife in the living room. She was just lying there quietly on the faded floral carpet we bought 20 years prior. A massive stroke. Fast. Silent. Unforgiving and devastatingly final. She was only 68 years old. And do you know exactly what she was holding in her stiffening hand when I found her on the floor? A glossy, brightly colored travel brochure for a Pacific coastal cruise, a trip we had been quietly talking about taking for 30 agonizing years. 30 years of waiting. 30 years of me looking at her gentle face and saying, "Next year, Ellie. Just wait until next year and we will live." I stood completely frozen over her lifeless body, tightly clutching that stupid corporate gold watch, and the absolute mind-shattering horror of what I had done washed over me like a towering wave of freezing water. I had intentionally, systematically deferred our joy. I had locked away our happiness in a dark vault for a safe, secure future. And that highly anticipated future turned out to be nothing more than a simple wooden box, lowered slowly into the cold, damp dirt. I was left completely alone in a cavernous, empty house, with a bank account full of numbers that suddenly, violently, meant absolutely nothing. I stood by her open grave in the pouring rain, staring down at the mud, and the brutal, unforgiving truth hit me so hard my knees buckled underneath me. I had been robbed, not by a masked man with a gun in a dark alley at night. I was robbed by the smiling people in tailored suits, by the invisible system that perfectly programmed me to constantly wait. They deliberately sold me the comforting illusion of security in order to easily steal my irreplaceable time, and I willingly let them do it. I killed her beautiful, simple dreams because I was too much of a coward to boldly live them today. You would rationally think that was the absolute crushing bottom. You would logically think that was the absolute end of the cruelty. But the system was not quite done with me yet. It had one more devastating punch to throw, just to make absolutely certain I understood the cruel punchline of this sick, twisted joke. I dragged my broken body and my broken spirit through the next 20 long years. I was a hollow, empty ghost haunting my own quiet, depressing living room. I lived modestly on my company pension, carefully budgeting every single dollar because that is exactly what good, responsible, deeply brainwashed citizens are supposed to do. I hoarded my little diminishing pile of financial security. And then came the catastrophic year 2008, the great global financial crash. You probably read about it in articles, or maybe you lost a job during that time. I lost the entire remaining foundation of my fragile existence. The massive automobile company that I gave 45 years of my actual blood, sweat, and youth to, the massive company that legally and morally promised to take care of me until the day I died, abruptly filed for bankruptcy. The massive corporate pension fund was completely gutted and emptied by executives. My entire life savings, cautiously tied up in the financial markets they confidently swore were perfectly safe, evaporated into thin air in a matter of days. I vividly remember the exact phone call with the bank, a cold, mechanical voice on the other end calmly explaining that my designated assets were completely liquidated. I felt the rough texture of the living room carpet under my knees when I dropped the telephone receiver. I was just a meaningless number on a massive corporate spreadsheet that got casually deleted to save their profit margins. At 88 years old, my impenetrable security vanished overnight. I was forcefully evicted from the promised middle class. I was forced to sell the house. The exact house I tragically traded Eleanor's beautiful ocean for. The house I gave my spine, my youth, and my eternal soul to safely pay off. I walked out of that place on a Tuesday afternoon with absolutely nothing to my name but $400 in my worn leather wallet and an old rusted Buick parked by the dusty curb. 45 years of back-breaking labor. 45 years of doing exactly what I was firmly told by the authorities, and I was casually thrown out onto the unforgiving street like a piece of defective, completely obsolete machinery. Everything I sacrificed for, everything I stubbornly made my sweet Eleanor sacrifice for, was a complete, total, expertly fabricated lie. The societal safety net was merely an illusion painted on a concrete floor. The promised reward was a cruel desert mirage. But I want to tell you something incredibly strange right now. Something that will probably shock you to your core. When I finally lost everything, when the merciless bank officially took the house and the bankrupt company legally took the money, I did not break down and cry. For the very first time in my entire miserable, obedient, cowardly life, I felt a brilliant, blinding spark of pure, unadulterated, righteous rage. And underneath that burning rage, I felt something I had not felt since I was a little boy running freely in the open fields. I felt completely, dangerously free. I suddenly realized with crystal clarity that if the rules of our society were entirely made up by rich men in tall buildings, if the corporate promises were all calculated, empty lies, then I absolutely did not have to play their rigged game anymore. I took that $400. I did not responsibly spend it on my expensive daily blood pressure medication. I did not responsibly use it to rent a tiny, depressing beige room in a sterile-smelling retirement facility. I boldly put cheap gas in that old rusted Buick. I tightly gripped the cracked steering wheel with my aching, severely arthritic hands, and I pointed the heavy hood of that car straight west. For the first time in nearly 90 years of breathing on this earth, I brazenly broke all the rules. I drove. I drove relentlessly through the endless flat plains. I pushed that struggling, coughing engine over the massive, towering mountains. I slept terribly uncomfortably in the cramped back seat. I ate cheap canned beans completely cold right out of the tin, and I felt the roaring, wild wind violently tear through the open windows and mess up my thin white hair. I was a 90-year-old fearless fugitive, escaping from the burning prison of the American dream. And finally, miraculously, against all rational odds, I made it. I reached the breathtaking, rugged coast of California, a magical place called Big Sur. I awkwardly parked the car on the side of the winding road. I dragged my tired, failing legs to the jagged edge of a massive rocky cliff, and I stood there silently looking out at the endless, violently crashing blue water of the massive Pacific Ocean, the exact ocean Eleanor begged me to show her for decades. I reached deep into the heavy pocket of my winter coat. I pulled out a small, heavy metal urn, and I slowly opened it. I let the strong, salty coastal wind take her. I watched her pale ashes fly out wildly over the magnificent water, exactly 50 years too late. I fell hard to the dirt and I cried until my fragile chest felt like it was going to literally crack wide open and bleed out onto the rocks. I live in a tiny, severely drafty, cheap wooden bungalow near that beach now. I do not have a robust savings account. I do not have a reliable monthly pension. I do not possess a single solitary ounce of financial security in this world. But I bravely wake up every single magnificent morning. I walk slowly and deliberately down to the sandy beach. I drink a hot cup of cheap, bitter black coffee, and I silently watch the brilliant golden sun dramatically rise over the water. And I solemnly swear to you, sitting right here today with absolutely nothing to my name, I have lived far more intensely, deeply, and truly in the last 16 years than I did in the entire 4 decades I spent locked away inside that deafening factory. You are actively listening to me right now. I know you are. I can practically see you through this screen. You are sitting there, working 60 hours a week, frantically chasing a plastic carrot on a stick that they will never, ever actually let you catch. You are perpetually tired. You are constantly deeply stressed. You are staring blankly at your digital calendar, mechanically crossing off the monotonous days, eagerly waiting for the brief weekend, waiting for the pathetic 2-week vacation, waiting for the elusive promotion, desperately waiting for the magical retirement that might never come. I am telling you to stop. Stop right now. Stop the video. Look at your hands. Raise them up and really, truly look at them. Now look at my hands. Look at these shaking, spotted fingers. These are the tired hands of a man who waited entirely too long. They successfully sold you physical comfort in order to quietly and legally steal your irreplaceable time on this earth. They deliberately convinced you that endlessly accumulating material wealth is the exact same thing as accumulating a meaningful, joyous life. It is absolutely not. The future does not exist. It is a mass societal hallucination. The future is a ghost story they tell you to keep you working. The only thing you actually truly own, the only thing that is legitimately yours in this vast, terrifying universe, is the actual breath moving in and out of your lungs right at this exact fleeting fraction of a second. I am begging you, from the very bottom of my deeply scarred soul, do not voluntarily retire from life before you actually physically die. Do not let the beautiful people you love become tragic, forgotten casualties of your obsessive financial planning. Go forcefully into your manager's office tomorrow morning and boldly take your stolen time back. Buy the ridiculously expensive plane ticket today. Walk immediately into the living room and tell them you love them today, right now, before the silence comes. Violently break the invisible, suffocating contract that is slowly choking the joy out of you. Do not wait until you are 106 years old, sitting completely alone in an empty room, realizing with absolute paralyzing horror that you spent your entire human existence meticulously preparing to live, but never actually took the brief time to simply live. The great, monumental, unforgiving lie of our modern society is that you have plenty of time. You do not. You have right now. You have exactly today. So do yourself a massive favor. Turn this screen off. Tear up the pathetic, predictable script they handed you the exact day you were born, and go live. Go enthusiastically make a huge mistake. Go be wonderfully irresponsible with your joy. And if you desperately need one more forceful push to wake up, if you need to hear the brutal truth again tomorrow morning so you do not fall dangerously back asleep at the steering wheel of your own life, then click the suggested video on your screen right now. Let the truth shake you. But do not just be a passive, silent viewer. Act, because I firmly promise you, with every remaining fiber of my being, the clock is loudly ticking, the sand is rapidly falling through the glass, and precious time does not ever negotiate.